Sunday, everybody. Happy Sunday, everybody. Good morning. Time to go live. It's 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Make it 8 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 a.m. On the left coast. That was just for Audrey. So good morning, folks. Good morning to everybody that's in here. I have been up for about 3 hours, but my face still looks like I just got up. Puffy this morning and stuffy and a little stiff and stuff like that. But I think I'll survive. I think I'll go in today doing all right. We survived any kinds of rioting last night. I think we're good and out in the country enough that we've avoided that. There was some concern because just a few miles up the road is Hudson. That's where Rocky Stucci lives. About 15-minute drive from here on the backcountry roads. And Hudson is the kind of the last gateway to Minnesota on the interstate. It's the Interstate 94 coming in from the east, really from the Chicago area if you come up all the way through Wisconsin. And once you get to Hudson, you're at the last major city. And it's a small town, but it's a trucker's small town. You know, all the interstate, there's all the shops and restaurants and all that stuff along the strip along the highway there, the freeway. And but it goes downhill to the river from there, the St. Croix and the bridge over to Minnesota. And it continues on as the interstate. And so there was a lot of concern. There was a letter from the mayor of Hudson sent to the governor of Wisconsin yesterday morning asking for National Guard help because not that we'd seen so much happening in Hudson, but it was the gateway to Minnesota. And there are reports, of course, of 70,000 to 75,000 agitants, rioters, not protesters, not Black Lives Matter people, not those folks, but the agitators who want to perpetuate the riots, which tells you there's something else going on, something more behind it. But that they were all heading up in this area, and one of the major ways from many parts of the country to get into Minnesota and to the Minneapolis area, at least from if you think Chicago and south of Chicago or east of Chicago, is through the I-94 freeway that comes right through Hudson. And so I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know that they blocked off every major or had stations with the National Guard at every major exit that would lead to Hudson. So I don't think there were any incidents last night. So that's good to know. And so I think this all, of course, this will all die down eventually, as it always does. But I liked that Bill Barr, our Attorney General, came out yesterday and said all of these kinds of acts are breaking of federal law. And if you cross state lines to riot, to arson, to agitate, to incite violence, then, of course, you're breaking federal law. And that makes it a federal matter. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I want to make it very clear that for anybody listening to this program, that I make a huge difference between the protesters and the agitators, the protesters and the rioters. The protesters, while I don't always see eye to eye with groups like Black Lives Matter, because I think that they forfeit. How do I want to say this? They focus on Black people who are killed, but they have their philosophical reasoning for that, but they seem to forget the white people who are killed and people of all other races as well. And so did you know, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but we looked them up for the show this week. Did you know that in the last several years, every year the statistics tell you that there are more white people that are killed by police officers than there are black people. But for some reason, the killing of black people, and by the way, those statistics showed by almost double white people are killed by cops, and but only about half the number of blacks killed by cops. Now you have to ask the question. I'm not making a racial statement here, but you have to look at that and ask the question: why is there such a huge movement about blacks being killed by cops when they are not the majority of people killed by cops? There should be Black Lives Matter, should be all lives matter. And I get really tired of the gymnastics of the imagination when it comes to trying to create a racial issue out of this. Now, are there racists out there? Sure. Are there bad cops? Sure. There's almost 700,000 cops in the United States. But we're talking about in recent years when all this has started rising up into the public mind, a handful of cops that have killed blacks and have been found guilty of it and guilty of murder. And so all of this stuff, and I'm speaking in generalities right now. I'm not going for detail this morning. I'm not going for microscopic dissected statistics and things like that so we can break it all down. I'm just saying in general, if you use common sense, blacks are killed just as much as whites are, but only by half the number. But there's a huge movement now and a supposedly race riots going on. I have to say, I don't think the race riots are coming from Black Lives Matter. I don't think they're coming from, while there may be elements within that would support it, I don't think the organization supports that. Like I started saying, I don't always see eye to eye with Black Lives Matter, but I don't believe that they are responsible for what you're seeing going on. I think there's probably a lot of Antifa influence in what's going on. I think that there are elements that want to see unrest in the United States. And those are the elements that are probably behind this without naming them and going through and again dissecting. That's for a show during the week. And we may have Nancy Planetta come on, maybe onto the Situation Room and talk about this all. But before I go any further, I haven't said good morning to anybody yet. Let me scroll back here a little bit. Teresa, nice to see you. And by the way, thank you for your donation. I appreciate that very much. And Leslie, you too. You too, right up there. Good morning, Leslie. Thank you for what you do to help out this effort. You guys are just like every week sending something in, and I appreciate that. And they're small amounts, but you don't know how much that means to see that in there. There are days I'll open up my PayPal account and go, oh, $20 more in there today. And so all of that to say, I appreciate that. That helps what I do. When I say, and I've got the little buttons that say, click here to donate to my research, all that says is that nobody hands me a paycheck to do this show. So it's nice to have little bits and pieces come in every now and then that go toward the cause. And I appreciate that, you guys, and everybody here that has thrown something in. I know Matt has, and I know Rhonda has, and Leslie and Teresa. And if I'm missing you here off the top of my head, it's only because I'm not looking at anything. Einstein said I never bother to remember anything I can look up. So, not forgetful. I'm just a genius. So, Matt, good morning, by the way. Since I mentioned your name, Chase Corrigan, good to see you. And Leslie, Teresa, Matt, Susie Q, how you doing? Good to see you here this morning. And Morgan Snow, I'm glad to see you. Don't get to see you quite as often these days, it seems. Glad to have you here this morning. And Lucky Stone, good to see you. I think my wife just sent a shipment out to you or something like that. If her business is her business, and she mumbles things to me while we're all working in here, and I don't always hear everything. And so I think you've got something coming from my wife that you ordered. And Leslie, I have to say, I'm glad you got that shirt. I did a Tam O'Hare all over print hoodie on my Etsy page. And they took the hoodie pocket, which I have a big image of Tam O'Hare on the front. And then the pocket is a separate image, but you try to put the image so everything matches up. And they sewed it on the back. So I put in a quick letter to our manufacturer on that, and Leslie got that in just a few days, the right one, and they let her keep the bad one. So now she's got a collector's item, and she's got a big hoodie with pockets in the back. Let's see who else we got. Audrey, I know I saw you in here, probably later down the way. Audrey, good to see you here this morning. And Barry Chad, good to see you, brother. Roger Rabbit, good to see you. Say hi to Carly for me. Mary Mansfield, good to see you this morning. And just scrolling through my chat room over here to get to see everybody. And if I'm missing you, it's only because I'm missing you. Steph, good to see you. And I think I got you all. Everybody that's at least visible in the chat room. Thanks for being here. So good morning, everybody. And oh yeah, Leslie, have Andy take a picture of that. I need a picture of that with the pocket on the back. So, well, I'm glad you're all here today. There's a lot of dire things going on in the country. Not to diminish it by any means, but keep in mind that human history is full of dire situations, of atrocities, of bad things that have been done. At least what we're not seeing right now is we're seeing people being attacked. There are some videos out there seeing people being hurt. I've heard of a couple of people who have died, but I'm really tired of the justifications that I've seen from people who say, well, you know, George Floyd lost his life and you're all boo-hooing about burning buildings. Yeah, we are boo-hooing about burning buildings, dumbass. And pardon me for getting a little crass about that, because you know what happens when there is loss of, why do you think in the old days they used to hang cattle rustlers? For stealing a cow, you could lose your life by dangling at the end of a rope. Why did they do that? Because the cows usually represented the livelihoods of many families. And now you get a big, grossly large rancher who owned 50,000 acres in the Old West and, you know, and had 50,000 head of cattle. You know, losing a cow or two probably wasn't as big a problem. But when you'd had the smaller families whose cow got stolen, their horse got stolen, their ox got stolen, you could be hung for that, because what you were doing by stealing that cow was depriving a family of its livelihood. Now take that into modern times. When you burn somebody's business down, or you loot thousands upon thousands of dollars of merchandise from them, what are you doing to that business? You could, with the major corporations, you might shut them down enough that they move out of the area. And so your local residents don't have that anymore, that convenience of a larger store. But when you shut down, what happens when you shut down a local business? What happens to a ma and pa shop that gets completely looted, all their windows broken out, burned down, cash registers smashed? Sure, they probably got insurance that will help cover some of that. But what you effectively do is you shut down their livelihood. How do those people live? What damage are you doing to a family when you destroy their business? What damage do you do to a neighborhood and a community when you burn down 80 businesses in a few blocks? When 170 total businesses are damaged and ruined as a result. I saw somebody put up a post yesterday. Oh, this ain't so bad. Here's a couple of business owners from the Lake Street district, and they're like, well, we got a rock thrown through the window, but we'll survive and go on. But you know what? That's diminishing the greater problem. There are people, agitators from outside the city, who came in and started destroying things in the name of rights for George Floyd. What did any of that have to do with bringing back George Floyd or raising awareness for Black Lives Matter or raising awareness of racial tensions or racial oppression? Not a damn thing. I can tell you this. Somebody said to me, a good friend of mine from a long time ago, who is on a very different political end of the spectrum than I am, as a general rule. She said something about, she said, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee and all the NFL players took a knee, you didn't listen back then. And maybe this is the natural evolution of privileged whites in America not listening to the plight of blacks. And we talked about that a little bit. I told her, I said, I think that's kind of nonsensical. I said, you also didn't see Colin Kaepernick, after taking a knee, start throwing Molotov cocktails into the audience. He didn't go lead a bunch of NFL players to burn down concession stands and memorabilia shops at the stadium. I mean, burn down the stadium. He just took a knee. And I said, yeah, wouldn't that have been, consider this, folks. I had a problem with the taking of the knee when that happened. Mostly because I think there should be respect given to our national anthem. And if not the thing itself, you can't look at an object and say that deserves my respect. But when we place honor on that because it represents who we are, and then you find a way around it to justify action against it. I had problems with Colin Kaepernick and everybody else. I don't even think Colin Kaepernick knew a damn thing intellectually about what he was doing. He got fed a lot of information after the fact. But suffice it to say, I had a problem with that when it happened. But now, let me ask you something. If that is the symbol of saying, we as a race have felt oppressed in America, what would you think of, and I said this to my friend, I said, it almost brings a tear to my eye to think if there were all these agitators and rioters that were going to burn down buildings in Minneapolis, and now it's spread, of course, across the country. Wouldn't it be interesting, and it brought a tear to my eye, even the thought of it, of you see all those people who would be burning down buildings, all of them simply take a knee. Now that would have been an impactful message, and that would have brought home. Now, I may not agree with all the philosophy behind the message of oppression against blacks in the United States, but that would have been an impact. Don't you think? What would that have done for you if you were a privileged white American like me? What would that have done for you to have seen thousands of people just simply take a knee in remembrance for George Floyd? Now, we might have, the time streams have gone different ways. If that had actually happened, we might have criticized that as well from some quarters. Oh, here we go. They're taking a knee. But do you think that would have been more impactful on the psyche, the public consciousness, to raise awareness for your cause rather than burning the shops of innocent neighbors? I think it would have been. And so I look at all this stuff going, yeah, it's about shifting attention, Lucky Stone. You're absolutely right. Just caught that in the scrolling chat room over here. And so, yeah, it's shifting attention. But I look at all this stuff and I begin to wonder who's behind it. Now, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories or anything like that, but I put up a little article yesterday, and I gleaned a lot of this from Tucker Carlson. And the reason I didn't put his name to it at first was because I didn't want people who come in and read my stuff, oh, that's just from a Fox News guy. It's invalid because it's Fox News. So later down the way, I told people, yeah, I gleaned a lot of this from Tucker Carlson. But he said that our leaders have sided with the agents of chaos. And they're now telling us that the crimes of the riotous mobs are our fault. We're the ones who caused this. Because why? Because we haven't paid attention to the plight of blacks in America. Now, I have to tell you at the same time that in my lifetime, I was born in 1960, so I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. In my lifetime, I have seen black CEOs. I have worked for black CEOs. I have worked with black sales reps and black executives and ad agencies, all through my career. I have seen blacks elected as representatives to the House, not only on a local level in the state of Minnesota, but also on a national level to Congress. I have seen black senators. I have seen black leaders of industry. I have seen black members of the Supreme Court of the United States. I have seen even a black president, or at least he was touted as one, saying he's probably less black than not, but you know where the appeal was. So I've seen all this happen in my lifetime. And it was normal. I didn't bristle against any of that, and neither did a lot of conservatives that I know. If you put a political label on it. But what I saw in all of this was, if you can be a CEO in this country, are you underprivileged? If you can be a black man who earns 5 times as much money as I ever earned in advertising with his executive position, was I the privileged person that was preventing him from getting there? Or did his own achievements get him there? What white privilege prevented a black man from becoming a senator or a member of the House of Representatives? Or you can't tell me it's all just black people that are voting for black senators and that's it. Because black America is frankly a minority still, percentage-wise, in the United States. And what white privilege prevented Clarence Thomas from becoming a member of the Supreme Court of the United States? What white privilege prevented a Barack Obama from becoming president? All of these questions, you start looking at that, and I say, we are a land of opportunity, equal opportunity for everyone. So the question isn't how much can you make of yourself to become personally great and attain positions of greatness and excellence and success. Maybe the question is about the impoverished and why the impoverished are where they are. I know a hell of a lot of white people that are as impoverished as a hell of a lot of black people who feel that they are oppressed because they are impoverished. So you can see, and now you can already start in your minds to imagine all the arguments that are brought up to de-justify that, to justify white privilege, or to justify oppression of races. I do not believe we have systemic racism in the United States. Our systems of government are not set up to prefer one race over the other. And if people go back to, just like we talked about the Boston Tea Party the other day, because that was being hailed as a picture of fighting against oppression. Well, not the same thing as anarchists lighting fire to neighbors' businesses. And I will tell you, like I said that day, one of the points that I hope got across to everybody was that in the Boston Tea Party, they were acting and demonstrating and destroying the property of the British East India Company because of the tea tax. It was a taxation issue, and they demonstrated that by destroying the products. They did not then go from the boats and onto the wharf and start destroying local pubs and inns. They did not set fire to warehouses of their local neighbors. They didn't do that. They were demonstrating one thing. And that was what led to the revolution. And so I rabbit trail on these side thoughts, and then I forget the mainstream where I'm heading. But all of this stuff is something where I think we are out of perspective in the United States. If I were to go on and talk about this article, we know that some people have a much better deal than the one that law-abiding citizens have in the United States. And they get to ignore the rules. They don't believe in order or fairness. They reject society itself. Reason and process and precedent mean absolutely nothing to these anarchists who are setting fire to neighborhood businesses. They use violence to get what they want immediately. And people like this don't bother. They don't go to work. They don't volunteer. They don't to help their neighbors. They don't pay taxes to help other people. They simply do and say whatever they want. And these are the criminal mobs that destroy what the rest of us have built. They don't contribute to the common good. And they never have. And they have no right to do what they're doing. Watching the burnings of neighborhoods and the riots in the streets, and now we're starting to see in other areas people being attacked. These things have absolutely nothing to do with what is right. You don't resolve an injustice by committing an injustice. And I think most of us have the common sense to know this. And this is the problem we're facing right now. Suddenly, yet, all these anarchists, they seem to have all the power. This isn't new to us. Their spasms of destructive violence are a feature of American history, and in fact, have happened in every country that exists, and it's happened throughout history. The ideologues are going to tell you that it's all about race relations or capitalism or police brutality or global warming. But the problem runs a lot deeper than that. What you're truly witnessing right now with all the rioting going on is the age-old ancient battle between those who have a stake in society and wish to see it preserved and those who don't and work to destroy it. That's why I begin to wonder about Antifa and other elements that are involved in organizing these riots. Because they are people that most of us sitting here, listening to this show, in the chat room, we all contribute to our society. We work to maintain ourselves, and sometimes even that's tough. But our money is taken out of our checks. We pay our taxes. And if you're self-employed like me, you don't have money taken out of your check, and you have to pay it at the end of the year. But You're paying tax every day on goods and services. Go put gasoline in your car. And out of that, what would it be? About $1.79 on average right now? That $1.79 on average, did you know only about 43 cents of that goes to the purchase of the actual gasoline? The rest are taxes, city, state, local, and that tells you got about 130 cents worth of that is going to tax. And that's just gasoline. Look at everything else that you pay tax on. Everything, if you're not paying tax, it's built into it because somebody's paying taxes on it. And they're not going to absorb that. You pay for it. So all goods and services have taxes. So when you start looking at that, you are a contributor to society. If you have a business, you are contributing to society. You are offering a service while trying to make a living and keep a roof over your head. You're contributing to that. It is the contributors to society who have set the system in place that exists, that system of how things are supposed to work. But then you've got your anarchists who will come in and use the killing of a man by a cop as a catalyst to burn the neighborhood down. What is their purpose in that, other than to create anarchy and division? So while you are working to preserve what we have, they are working to destroy it. And underneath it all, the current violence that we're seeing has very little to do with what happened when a Minneapolis police officer choked out the life of a man. I don't care if he's a white man, a black man, a yellow man, a red man, a polka dot man. When that injustice took place, and it was taken notice because he was black, all hell starts to break loose. But most of your protesters and your demonstrators are renouncing the destruction of the cities by anarchists. Now, it has to do with who honors and respects civilization and the preservation of civilization versus those who do not. That's the big battle going on right now, today, even this very moment. Those business owners in Minneapolis who have a stake in making their community, their society work, and those who have no concern for life and the building and preservation of their own society are who is at battle here. So according to our leaders, and sadly to many of their followers, the crimes of the mob are the punishment we deserve. Who's we? A society that is ignorant of the oppression of black people? No, I don't think we're ignorant of that at all. I think everybody has equal opportunity in this country, as I've already talked about, already demonstrated. Racism is a thing of the heart, the individual heart. It's not systemic. The crimes of the mob are the punishment we deserve, we're being told. And many are buying that line. We're being told by our legislators that it might seem racist if they say anything negative about the rioters. And so they don't. They stay silent. Well, that's starting to change. We're starting to see even Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, leftist, he came out and said something about the rioters, that he believes that there are other elements at play that are bringing them in, and I think he's right. And so we're so afraid of hurling a racially motivated epithet at us that we keep our mouths shut. I was told the other day, as I mentioned, by a friend of my daughter's, that I was a racist. I blow that off. That doesn't hurt me. Oh, I've been stabbed in the heart. Somebody called me a racist. That's happened a few times already, because I don't take the publicly acknowledged stance out there. Well, I think the thing is that most people who think with common sense are not the people that are out there shouting at the loudest and getting followers to shout it with them. The reason you hear so much of the other side, that is from people who I think do not operate with common sense but are pushing an activist cause. So what you hear is activism. And I'm not afraid of somebody calling me something. I happen to know I'm not a racist, so what's your words going to do to me? You call me a racist? Oh, okay. Thanks. And I don't even want to. I'm considering in my head whether or not to get into this. The reason this same person called me a racist just 2 days ago was hailing back to a public conversation I was having. My daughters, Abby and Bryn, they have a company that makes mermaid tails. And they were announcing, hey, Disney has come out. They're going to make a live, remaking a live. Hello, I'm stumbling over my words for some reason. A remaking of The Little Mermaid, only live action, like they've done with Beauty and the Beast and others. And this was a little over a year ago that this came out. This news came out, and they had cast a young black girl to play Ariel, Little Mermaid, who in the old Disney cartoon, of course, was a redheaded white girl, a white mermaid. Now, does it matter what the hell color skin a mermaid has? No. In my mind, they'd be kind of bluish green and fishy looking, but not pink or black. But that's just the way I think about it. But in the pantheon of remakes of Disney animated movies into live action, they've basically tried to keep all the characters looking the same as they were in the animated piece. And then I put up the question. I said, from a creative standpoint, I prefaced it. I said, I have a problem with changing the formula. I said, I have a problem when they're changing the race of a fictional kind of being, a mermaid, from the redheaded white girl to a black girl. I said, I don't have any problems with the racial issue. I said, I have a problem with the creative issue, especially when questions of creativity are being dictated by political correctness. Or, we've got to, I said, maybe this girl, this black girl, is the most phenomenal decision they could have made. I said, I tell you what, I said, either way, I said, in the discussion, I said, I'm going to take my kids to see it and they're going to love it. And I said, I'm sure I'm going to love it too. I said, but as a creative director, a creative artist, I said, I have a problem with not with being creative, but with changing the original. And of course, that was the original. These same people who called me racist the other day, that was their basis for calling me a racist. Oh, you're just racist. And I go, well, yeah, I guess that's it, isn't it? I'm just racist. So I had a huge problem with that. But that kind of thinking. And I don't let it get to me, but I comment on it. I talk about it because I think it's interesting how quickly people fall. And at the time I said that, and I've said it again. If everything is racism, nothing is racism. Racism has to stand out as being something that is worth being called racist. Not because people think differently or have different opinions about something. I don't care. It's almost like you can't say, when the Wild Wild West, I grew up on that TV series with Robert Conrad, tough white guy, who just passed away not long ago. played government agent James West in the Wild Wild West series set in the, what was it, about the 1870s, something like that, post-Lincoln era. And cowboys, Old West. And when they remade that movie, now probably about 15 years ago or more, they cast Will Smith, famous black comedian. I love Will Smith. I love his work. They cast him as Agent James West. And I was like, James West wasn't a black guy. And how many black men in the Old West historically in the 1860s and 70s were actually government agents? Maybe they existed. Maybe there's some famous cases that exist that I don't know of. But I thought, to me, it wasn't about history. It was about changing the character. I said, when you make him a black man, you change the character of why he was who he was and doing what he was doing. So it wasn't a racial thing for me, although the actors were racially white and black. It was a thing of changing the character. I didn't like what they did to the character. Same thing with Nick Fury in the Avengers movies. Nick Fury is a white guy in the comic books for decades, but they cast Samuel L. Jackson. So what, you might say? I didn't have as big a problem with that because of comic book hero. I didn't care. But I thought, you're seeing a lot of casting decisions being made to be more racially equanimous, whatever the word is. And maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, as a creative, there are certain things I don't like to see changed. Sure, it would be fun to, what if Rick Blaine in Casablanca, they make a remake of Casablanca, and instead of a Humphrey Bogart white tough guy, they cast a Samuel L. Jackson to play Rick Blaine. Would that have worked in a World War II setting? Would that have worked in that movie? No, probably not. There are certain things that you get used to on a creative level. You can try them out creatively if you want. It's like there was a movie maybe some of you may or may not remember, About Last Night. It came out in the mid-1980s. It was Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, and Jim Belushi were in that movie. And Elizabeth Richardson, I think her last name is. But that movie, fun movie, fantastic movie. I enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite movies in the 80s, of that whole scheme of 80s movies thing when we were in our 20s. Now, they remade that movie a few years ago using all black characters. I didn't see it, but it was a miserable flop, is what I heard. They tried to use the formula and most of the same scripting, and it didn't work. Now, it's okay to do that stuff, but did it work? The formula didn't work in that setting. They would have had to change it too much to make it relevant to a black community, to a black audience, to black actors. Is that racism to say that? No, I think it's just creative process. So anyway, this is the reason I was originally called racist by friends of my daughters. And of course, they brought it up again the other day when we were discussing all of this riot stuff. It's because I'm racist. That's why I have the views I have. So in case any of you wondered, I'm just a white privileged racist, obviously, by the words of some people out there. Anyway, as you continue to look at this issue, when we express an opinion that our leaders and their followers don't like, they tell us that we're being racists. They tell us that we're committing violence just by our words and actions. But when criminals commit actual acts of violence, it gets called free speech. So our system and our society only function because average people who are dutiful and possess decency, self-control, a sense of responsibility toward others created it. That's the only reason our society functions and our system works. They sustain the system and they pay the bills. None of the criminal thugs who looted Target in Minneapolis and burned down businesses, egged on by the talking head nihilists on television who enable them, have given anything to sustain our society. Yet all of these criminal destroyers think that this kind of arrangement is going to last forever for them. And our leaders seem to be doing nothing about it. And all we can do is control our own behavior. Think about that the next time you pay for a permit to build a deck on the back of your house, or I don't know, pour a concrete foundation to put up a nice tool shed. You got to get permits and pay the city for those things. Or next time you have to write a check for your quarterly tax payments. Two things: giving permits to build things in their yard and paying taxes that none of the anarchist rioters have ever done, I'd be willing to wager. So you look at all of that and you say, wow, is there an inequity in America? Yeah, there is. Why do we let, KTM says, let's see a black Superman or Batman. And I'm like, okay, no problem with that, but why? Why see a black Superman or Batman? I know there's a black Spider-Man that Spider-Man has passed on, this new animated film that came out that was really well done. I thought it was really good. It's kind of an inner city kid who picks up the mantle. And so Roger Rabbit says bats are already black. That's racist. So, yeah. Hey, Paul Astucci, how you doing? I see you're here. Ever seen Sebastian Mono? I obviously haven't because I can't say his name. Moniscalco, Italian comedian, so funny. I'm not sure if I've seen him, unless he must be somebody new. You're not talking about Father Guino Sarducci, I remember him, and he wasn't Italian. So he's faking Italian. Or was he Italian? I don't know for sure. So if you call a person a bigot, I guarantee they'll feel that more. No one wants to be a bigot, says Audrey. Let's see a black Superman or Batman, KTM has said. So what? To me, I don't really care. But I'm like, can't we create a new superhero that's black? I know there was Black Panther. He's not a new superhero, but he's one that came into the fore in the last few years. So I got no problem with that. Make your own thing. Make something new. I'm talking about creators, not about a race. When I say make your own thing, I'm saying to a creator, if you're going to make something, why rehash and change the old or the existing to fit a new racial message or profile that you want to give it because you want to be politically correct? Why not create something new? Why take Batman, rich white guy, and make him a rich black guy? Why not make a new superhero? Batman's already got an identity. So these are the things that I have. And Kay, I'm not taking you to task at all. I'm just answering the question the way I would ask it, the way I would answer it. So, hey, Mike, how you doing? Yehudi! So, I'm seeing comments here, and I'm seeing them out of context because I haven't been paying much attention to the chat room. Sorry to say. Cases, we don't know for sure if Jesus was a black man or not. Some say he was. Well, I can tell you, KTM, right away, and it's not a racial statement I'm making. Jesus was not a black man, nor was he a white guy with blonde hair. Remember, Jesus was a Semite. He was a Jew. He was an Israelite. Israelites were a Semitic people. He would have looked more, for lack of a quicker, better description, more Aramaic or Arabic than he would have looked anything else. Now, could he have been a darker skinned Arabic? Maybe. Doesn't matter to me either way. The thing is, he was from, there was a, I don't remember what his tribe was, but he could name his tribe, his Israelite tribe. He was a descendant, supposedly, of David, which we know he was probably not. His parents hailed back to David in their family tree. His mom did, and his stepdad, if you consider the virgin birth. So Jesus was a Jew. He was an Israelite living in the land of Judah, most likely was not black. You can have black Jews nowadays, but this is thousands of years later as races converge and coalesce. Back then, he was a Hebrew, which means he was, one of your more olive-skinned peoples. So that being said, I would say, and Kay, I've taken two things you've said now, and I'm not picking on you by any means. I'm just reacting to things that you're saying. Paul Astucci says racists hate people solely on the basis of color, gender, religion, etc. I agree. That's who a racist is. You base your evaluation of a person on the initial brush you have with the color of their skin, with their religion, with other things. And so I was raised, by the way, folks, for all of those out there, I'm sure the ones who call me a racist aren't listening to this show. But if any of you were, I would say I was raised in the 60s. I was a kid during the civil rights movement. We learned about all this stuff in school. We grew up, my mom taught us that everybody is equal and that you treat everybody equally. Because, as kids, we didn't have it in our minds we may have seen a black kid and thought, he's a different color than me. Mom, why is his skin so dark? May have been a question of a little kid. My own kids have asked me that. That's not racism in them. It's observation. They see, oh, that kid's got really bright orange hair. Why is his hair so orange, Mom? That's not racism. Neither is recognizing the color of somebody's skin. Operating on whether or not their skin color diminishes them or exalts them or gives them a place in society is racism. I was grown up to never believe in those things. As a matter of fact, we never did. We treated everybody fairly and equally, as equals to us. That's how I grew up. I wasn't exposed to racism until I was exposed to it coming from the other side, telling me we are racist because we're white. I'm like, no, I'm not. So, there you go. Superheroes are incredibly violent. Truth in me, you're right, they are. Sometimes they're violent for a cause. I got to tell you something. If some criminal came into my house and threatened the lives of my children and my wife, you would find me becoming an incredibly violent man. So superheroes were supposed to be violent for a reason. It was they're the ones doing the dirty work, so to speak, to keep society alive. And so I get that. I would do an awful lot of dirty work if somebody attacked my wife or my kids. I can tell you that. And I'm not even a superhero. So yeah, you're right. Superheroes were very violent. They had to be violent. But probably the positive side of violent. What did Paula say that somebody's laughing about here? And Teresa says, LOL, Paula. I'm looking. Let's see. I'm looking. Maybe it goes way back. You got some ideas. Yeah, create new. Yeah, create new. I agree with you. Create something new. I say that just in general, not when it comes to racially changed characters or altered characters, but just to remakes of things. I'm like, oh my God, can you not come up with a new idea? You're a creative. Now, they say there's 5 basic stories in history and in the world. And that those just get retold over and over and over again in different forms. And I get that. And, I've created characters and I'm using those characters. Here, I'll tell you something. Some of you already know this. And my agent just bugged me yesterday about this. I'm writing a fictional book for her. And I came up with characters. It's, as you know, it was the 10 Breaths of Ra. And I may end up changing that title eventually. That's the working title. And it was about, it was set in 1920s in Egypt, and other places in the world come up, but basically in Egypt. And my main characters are a pair of occult investigators. They aren't at the beginning of this book, but they become that through the course of this book. And the characters that I chose were, there's a woman who is an Irish woman, red flowing hair, stuff out of my fantasy life, maybe. But she's an Irish archaeologist, and I've created her as a fictional, the first woman to graduate from Oxford with a PhD in archaeology. And yet, because it's still the 1920s, she's finding herself fighting against the system that is all male dominated. That's an understory, kind of a backstory. The story isn't about that, but it involves her struggling to try to be recognized for who and what she is and what she brings to the table. The other partner in this is a young man. Oh, and her name is Dr. Eileen Byrne is her name. Byrne. Dr. Eileen Byrne. And her friend that she grew up with, they're contemporaries, early to mid-20s. He is a young man who is Romani. He is British Romani. Romani, fancy word for gypsy. His grandparents, in the story is his backstory, were horse-drawn wagon traveling gypsies, like the old Cher song, born in the wagon of a traveling show. My mama used to dance for the money they'd throw. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. We'd hear it from the people of the town. I don't know why that's in my head. Probably because I heard it every day of my life when I was in my teens, back in the early 70s. But that's who he is. Now, his name is Dano, D-A-N-O, Dano Badcock. And I dug into Romani family names for the purpose of naming him. And I thought that was just a fun name to say because it's got the word cock in it. And but I thought I would take that name and make it a fun name to say, to roll off the tongue. Badcock. So he's Dano Badcock. He is a young 20-something son of actually aristocratic Romani, which were rare. And what I've got in the backstory is his grandparents were the, horse and wagon gypsy traveling show people, while his dad made his way into doing the new airplane work, aeroplanes, as they called them. And he made a killing during World War I. And with the fortune he amassed, he settled down, of course, and bought an old estate, 1,000-year-old estate in Wales. And that's the backstory to this character. And so you've got a wealthy Welsh Romani kid, who he's more olivey complected. He's got the big dark brown eyes and the black hair, and he's the look. And his friend Eileen Byrne, redheaded Irish woman, and it's the adventures in this book that they set out to do. So while the story might be another rehashing of something old, I've tried to put enough contexts on it to make it new and viable and exciting. I've got this woman archaeologist and this aristocratic, wealthy young Romani from England, and the two of them pair up in this adventure. And Audrey, imagine Three Musketeers done like Charlie's Angels. Yeah. I want to see it done. The Three Musketeers ain't the Three Musketeers without swords. That's all I can say. Let's see. James Rolfe took a lot of shit because he refused to review or watch it. What are we talking about there? What did he refuse to watch? Ghostbusters? I see Ghostbusters up there. Oh, the all-woman Ghostbusters? Yeah. I didn't even bother to watch it. I got to tell you why. It's not because I hate women. I'm not a misogynist. It's that, number one, some of the women who are in the stars, they're just people I don't watch anyway because I don't care for them personally. I don't go out of my way to go to a Rosie O'Donnell movie. Doesn't do much for me. So I never found her funny. Probably would never, ever go see a movie unless it happened upon me accidentally while scrolling through Netflix. Yeah, and Steph says she liked it a lot. I didn't like it. I didn't like it from the trailers, I should say. I didn't watch it, so I didn't care to. To me, it changed the formula too much. Now it's going to be interesting to see what the new Ghostbusters movie is going to do. They're making that more like a horror film. That's changing up the formula, but they've also got some of the original cast back. Yeah, Leslie, I try to avoid Rosie O'Donnell too. And what's her name? Schumer. Senator Schumer's niece, I think it is. Amy Schumer. No time for her whatsoever. And I will not go out of my way to watch a movie she's in, although I've stumbled across some and she made me laugh. But at the same time, her politics overtook her comedy for me. It's like Robert De Niro. Used to love Robert De Niro. Probably never watch him again because I don't like his politics. He ruined, for me, his screen persona with his personal life. There are some actors that it's not politics, but things in their personal lives I won't watch them for because I don't like them. So, blah. No crying in baseball. That's true. So, Paula. And if I had not said it well enough, my gloss over, Paula, how you doing? Rocky's not here to respond, so. All right. So maybe enough on that. I brought up this book, and I've been messing with it the whole time. This is when I started reading. It's called Killing Monsters, and why children need fantasy, superheroes, and make-believe violence. I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, and maybe I'll do this more during the week. But there is a good scare how horror books, horror movies, horror video games can actually help kids conquer their fear. My agent put out an article at least a year ago, and I couldn't find it, but it was all on why kids need horror. Kids need horrific things set in a way into a setting where they can understand it. I've got a great book, and it's not handy right now. It's done by Lemony Snicket, the guy who did A Series of Unfortunate Events. But it's all about a kid being afraid of the dark. It's a picture book, with 2 minutes worth of reading on each page. And it's how he's afraid of the dark and how he talks to the dark as if it's a thing. "Hello, dark," he says. And the dark says, "Come on downstairs. I'm going to show you something." And in the course of the book, the boy who's afraid of the dark and afraid to go downstairs goes down into the basement because the dark is calling him. And he says, "Over here." And there's a chest of drawers, and the bottom drawer is open. And he reaches into the bottom drawer, and what's in it? Light bulbs. So the dark says, "Pretty much there you go." And he says, "Thank you, dark." And he goes back upstairs and replaces his burned out light bulb. And the dark helped him do that. And but it's a really cute story. It's a good story. My kids love it. Read that to them all the time. But why that's a small example of a horrific topic, being afraid of the dark. And how do we deal that with our kids? Maybe stories about being afraid of the dark, about the dark having a persona, which is horrific when you think about it. See you, Paula. Go have fun mowing your 20 acres. Yuck. I just mowed an eighth of an acre yesterday, and I'm hurting because it's all on a hill. Let's see. Kids need fantasy. Kids need superheroes. They need make-believe violence in order to, I think, adjust properly in society. And I blame my imagination. That was the principal reason I had such a colossal fear of the dark when I was a kid. I was deathly afraid of the dark. It didn't matter what I heard or saw or read. My unconscious had this uncanny way of intensifying anything remotely frightful. If I saw a tree branch shadow playing across my window at night, there were always giant skeletal fingers. If I heard someone moving through the undergrowth at dusk, something moving. Could have been a mouse or a squirrel. You could bet your bottom dollar it was a werewolf that was stalking me, and I thank Dark Shadows for that when I was a kid. The show, Dark Shadows. And don't get me started on the things that lurked in the graveyard around the corner or in the areas of the street that weren't lit by the street lamps on the corners. Fear is a very commonplace emotion, particularly for children, and yet it's the emotion that gets all the bad press. Sure, you can have a fiery, furious, anger-ridden, gleeful, happy-clappy joy, weeping and wailing, sadness and disapproving disgust, but for some reason, fear is the one that folks don't like to talk about or explore, especially with kids. And this is folly, and I'm going to say a few words about that here, that I think childhood can be scary, but not in a monstrous sense. But certainly, it's a world into which children are taking tentative steps in life. It can be an intimidating, frightening place, sometimes with genuine scares to contend with. Yesterday, I had to explain to my own kids how the riots were happening in Minneapolis. And why is there fear all of a sudden in Hudson, Dad? What's this thing that you and Mom were talking about, a letter from the mayor of Hudson to the governor of Wisconsin? And so I had to explain, and I showed them pictures of what was going on in Minneapolis, the burning of buildings and things like that, and giving them a sense of what was going on. Learning how to face fear, at least for the first time, is a rite of passage. And where better to start to do that within the pages of a good book? So I think good books on horror written for kids are good for kids. Remember when we were talking last week about the week before about missing fathers and missing ritual, that there is no sense of ritual fear, no sense of ritual growing up? I think that's an essential thing for kids. So unlike movie frights, which can feel all-encompassing and leave a mark on young viewers long after the last scene, They dream about it. Book scares are easier to manage. A book isn't going to chase you. It won't leap out and make you jump. Oh, however, I have read some books where my little girl didn't want me to read anymore. Don't read that, Daddy. That's scaring me. And it was a kid's horror book about demons in the dark and stuff like that. Not real demons, and talking that way. Talking about these, think of Lord of the Rings, think of demonic and those kinds of senses. And so, if a story proves scary, shut the book. That's what I did. And kids can contend with their fears, and they need to. It's confidence building to be bold and to conquer the things that frighten us. And a scary book can help us do just that. My book is going to be the 10 Breaths of Ra that I started talking about. It's going to be a scary book. It's not necessarily meant for little kids. It's meant for young readers to young adults. But horror can get a child reading something. The adrenaline fuel kick that fright brings with it can fire a lifelong love of literature. It's the reason I gravitated to anything and everything that featured monsters when I was a boy. Yeah, they scared me, but they also kept me turning the pages, seeking out the next fright, excited to see and feel what came next. So there are a lot of books out there that are written for kids that are meant to be scary books. And I actually think that that's okay for kids to read. I think it's okay for them to see horrific movies. I'm not talking about the horror movies where it's blood and gore and guts. I don't need to expose my kids to that, even if it's fake. But movies that are psychologically horrific, monsters and things like that, I think it's okay because it helps them cope with how to handle with fear. And it's so that's something I was going to talk about today. But since I spent so much time on the other, well, maybe tomorrow on the radio show, maybe we'll talk about this in great depth. Why kids need fantasy superheroes and make-believe violence. I think it's essential for kids. My coffee is officially cold. All right. So I'm going to leave off with all of that stuff. I'm going to do a couple of one-card readings. If I can find my cards. They're there. And so let's just do a few of these. You always skip the beginning of Nemo, KTM. It says, yeah, it's where everybody gets eaten. All the eggs get eaten and mom gets eaten by a barracuda. It's good for kids to face those fears. Unless it's too much for them to handle, We have to introduce them to those things because of life. Your first scary book, says Teresa, was Stoker's Dracula. Yeah. And that's a tough book to read because it wasn't written to kids. And it was written in a different century. So the language is different. But Dracula was good. I can't think of the first horror book I read. I used to read a lot of Star Trek novels when I was a kid. They were the novelizations of the episodes, which put a lot more meat on the bones sometimes. And, of course, they're fictional stories. I had a whole stack of those. Wish I still had them. I don't know what I ever did with them. Like 30 of them. Star Trek novels. Of course, you can buy them all new now, but all the reprints. But I had all the originals. So, all right, I'm just shuffling up so we can get somebody. Who would like a reading? Let's see. Roger says, doesn't even Disney movie begin with the loss of a loved one? Every Disney movie? Yeah, pretty much. You see a lot of that. That is the vehicle. That is the story being retold. That's the vehicle on which they build a plot. I get that. Animal Farm was tough. And we didn't read that until like 9th grade, I think. That's when we finally read Animal Farm. Let's do, before I get anybody asking here for a reading, I'm going to just do one on the current situation in Minneapolis. Let's see what we get for that. Truth in Me wants one. Okay, we'll get you next. Here is a reading I'm just going to do on the current situation. What's going on with all of this? And I pull this card. It's the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords is indecisiveness. It's the swords are crossed. Well, in this picture, they're not, but usually you see the two swords crossed. That's feeling blocked, feeling indecisive, not knowing which path to take. That is the Two of Swords. And that is something where the call in that card is to break the indecisiveness. There's usually in this card, there's a woman who is blindfolded and she's got the two swords with her arms crossed across her. And swords, of course, is the presence of conflict you give and get. And it's crossed blades that are presenting you. It represents a balance of forces, but not necessarily the absence of struggle, but an equal distribution of force in the opposition. There's the good and the bad. And it might indicate you're in a position to mediate a conflict, or it might suggest that you're caught in the middle of a dilemma with no clear outcome. And the resolution is something that'll bring peace, but it's a thing that says there's conflict that's going to lock up your energies in the efforts to resolve it. That's Minneapolis right now, and things going around the country. We've got conflict that we can't figure out how to resolve. There's a good side to it and a bad side to it. Some would say the good side is the protesting against the death of a black man at the hands of an authority figure. Some would say it's a recognition of civil rights. That's the good things. The bad things, the burning of neighborhoods and the anarchy. And so there are equal things that are contesting. And by overcoming our indecision about those things, we take a deliberate action to decide the resolution. So always with this card was the idea, and I remember many times saying to people, you're stuck at a crossroads, you can't move. Indecision, indecisiveness. The best way to break indecision and indecisiveness is to do what? Be decisive. So you have to push through the block, rip the blindfold down, and decide if there are equal ways to go, I have to make a decision. I can't sit on my butt in the dust at the crossroad and be held up. I'm held up because I'm not moving. It's a card of not movement. So you have to choose a route and go. And so the card symbolizes conflict resolution, decisions that have to be made, breaking the indecisiveness that's in front of you. So that's what we're facing right now, I think, as a society over this. We're at a crossroads. Which path are we going to choose? And how are we going to break the indecisiveness? There it is. That's a card in general for today. So, all right. I've got Truth in Me. I'm going to do a little card reading for you. We're going to do a single card. All right, here we go. This is for Truth in Me. Front and center. And Truth, I don't know who you are. Don't know your situation, but I don't need to. Let's see what cards have to say for you. All right, one more shuffle, and then I'll cut the deck for you. At least I don't think I know who you are. I don't recognize you by the moniker. All right, here we go. And the card that I've got for you is the Page of Wands. All right, you see the Page of Wands. The Page of Wands was a messenger. The pages were all messengers of the king. Wands has to do with your emotional makeup. This is the stuff that makes you go in the morning. The red in the card is supposed to talk about the fire and the energy of youth, youthful vigor, comparing whatever it is. You might not be a youth, but it's talking about youthful vigor. And it's a vital indicator of good news, this card, that's coming to you about either yourself or a youthful individual. If the card is describing you personally, it indicates that you're possessing some kind of boundless energy, deep loyalty, youthful love of learning, and things like that. And it might point toward a new project that you're going to be undertaking. The prospects of recent work have energized you. It's energized you to seek financial gain, to begin a new creative project. It might be a new company, a new business, a new thing you set out to do. It's like being an artist and having a new project. So good news is coming, though. The very present feature of this card is that good news is on its way to you. It's going to infuse joy into your life. It's going to be a happy thing. And I always hate the happy messages of tarot because people think, oh, you're just fortune telling. Now, there's some happy cards in the tarot, and this is one of them. This is talking about new phase of life. There's a flash of inspiration, or something bolsters your inspiration, and it's going to be brought about by good news, progress in whatever field you're undertaking, the things you invest yourself in, possible career advancement. Maybe in this whole pandemic setting, maybe something of a career that's lost and back, or an advancement, or whatever it might be. You might have been an essential employee for all I know. So it's energetic, lively, fearless energy. It's a card that possesses this can-do attitude. It's a hands-on approach. It's being adventurous, being ambitious, overcoming your fears, and starting new projects. It's using your skill and your courage, this card. So whatever's going on in your life, Truth in Me, is going to be bolstered by good news, something happening. You may already know what this is. It may be coming yet, but this is a very present card. This is where you are right now. So saying something good's coming that's going to bolster you a bit. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be adventurous. It's going to maybe get you out of where you are and into something better. So there you go. New adventure. Yes, yes, and yes is Truth in Me. Well, that's good. Awesome. All right. There you go. Anybody else want a single card reading? We can do a couple more. I hope that was good for you, Truth. Teresa is next. All right, says Leslie. All right, we'll do you, Teresa. Let's see, I'm just looking at some of the comments here. All right. Here we go. That's a fun reading. I'd like to have that card myself. New adventures and things. I just need the time and energy to finish my book and keep my family afloat at the same time. Oh, what was your first message, Teresa or Leslie? I saw Leslie. I saw Teresa. If I got that backwards, Chase, Teresa, and Barry. There we go. Okay, that's 3 of you. All right, let's do it that way. I've been shuffling for Teresa, so I'm going to put her first. Then I'll do Chase. All right, Teresa, I'm going to cut this for you. And let's see what card you have. Right off the top of the pile, you have Temperance. This is your card, Temperance. I'm trying to get the light to not shine on it too badly there. So Temperance. And if you see, she's pouring liquid from one vessel to another. Temperance is about balance. It's about pouring water in the tarot, represents emotions. So it's all about balancing emotions without spilling a drop, kind of thing. And so this is a card that talks about bringing balance to your situation, Teresa. It's a very optimistic card, by the way. Temperance encourages you to find balance in your life. Approach problems with a calm demeanor. Recognize that opposing forces need not be at war within you. They can exist without them being at war. Tread carefully in major decisions that you make. Use confidence that good decisions are going to lead you to a good resolution of things that you're involved in. And the experiences that you've had in working in harmony with other people is going to be something that's an ongoing trend for you. Balancing the material and the physical elements in your life has deeply influenced your life, the way you do things. And something you have long desired is going to come to fruition, but expect a wealthy partnership with someone to develop in your immediate social circle. That's kind of the fortune-telling aspect of the card. Balance brings good things is what the meaning really is with that. And you have to take control as you step out into the future with this, of taking control of your life, your practical moderation in life. Stay in balance is what the card says. And you're going to resolve any kind of current conflicts that might exist for you. And it might begin new things happening for you that bring successes in other ways. And so the card is really all about divine intervention. It's balance, it's harmony, and the positive overall presence of the card really reveals this high levels of self-confidence and control that you take in your own endeavors. And it's a very positive card to have. So look for the balance in things. There you go. Temperance, Teresa. I see you as a very epitome of this card anyway. So I think this is just encouraging you to keep doing what you do. So there you go. Chase, let's do you next. All right, shuffling up for Chase. I like to shuffle in between every person. I think it just rearranges things. All right, Chase, here we go. I'm going to cut the deck for you. Boom. Here's your card. All right. You've got the 5 of Wands. Now, the 5 of Wands, it talks about mock battles that are going on around you. It's like people are talking about you in maybe not the most savory of ways. It's a card that says all these, the mock battles refer to little fights, little differences, little things going on around you that you don't necessarily have to stick your hand into the fray. but you have to watch this and be careful of it, because mock battles can sometimes turn into real ones. And the presence of the wands is one of, again, emotional makeup. It's the stuff you bring to the table. It's the way you conduct your life. The battles that you faced have led you to kind of a boldness of character. And this is a really valuable trait that you've developed. But only in moderation. You don't want to get too many battles going on. Facing adversity requires tact, diplomacy, and it might feel as though your progress is on things is more delayed than you want it to be by obstacles that are in your path. They're not obstacles that can't be moved, but they're things you can move. This speaks about miscommunication, a misunderstanding that's going to pose obstacles in your progress. Whatever's going on with you right now, there might be something being miscommunicated. Either you've miscommunicated something, or somebody has interpreted you the wrong way, and it's creating obstacles. And there's going to be an opportunity in the future that requires you to tame your boldness a bit in order to succeed. Sometimes, just by way of example, I come out very bold and confident. Some people have called me arrogant because that's the miscommunication. But I'm bold and I'm confident, and it turns some people off because I want to know what I'm talking about, know what I'm doing, know what I'm saying. And if I lack confidence, I put on an air of confidence to make my way through things. So this is by way of example. I don't know exactly what you do, Chase, but this is, no one can decide your actions or decide the kind of person you are. So you have to rely on your own strength of will to achieve this balance. And you might be required to tame your confidence a little bit to be more diplomatic in a situation. So this card is talking about you're going to be challenged. It's not going to be a big battle that you have to wage, figuratively speaking. It's mock battles. It's challenges that are coming your way, and you're going to have to defend yourself against other people and against other perceptions maybe of who you are. And it's struggle, it's anxiety, overall unease with internal battles that you have over these situations. And it's like, if I use my own example again, it's not that I don't get internal stuff going on. It's that I don't cater to it and I don't give into it. So the negative foreboding presented with the card is kind of a negative that you're going to have to deal with. So you got stuff going on around you right now. This is one of saying, be confident, temper your confidence a bit in order to listen and find the way to get through something. So I hope that works for you, Chase. I hope that's meaningful, means something. All right. Then we had Teresa, we had Chase, and who was the third? I'm looking for that. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see. I saw Teresa and Chase and I can't find it. Who was the third person? Barry. Barry is next. Chase, I hope that wow was for the reading. I hope that meant something for you. So, all right, here we go. Let's see. For Barry. Barry Chad. Barry Chad. Let's see what we got for you here. One more. Here we go, Barry. I'm going to cut this deck for you. See where we end up. All right, Barry, you got the Queen of Coins right here. There she is. All right, the Queen of Coins represents a woman in your life that you know. And she's somebody that They generally, the royal face cards always represent a specific person that we know, or they are an element or a character trait of us. Even if you're a man, you can show some of the traits of one of the queens in the tarot, because it's saying that you are showing her her attributes are coming out in you. And this is a card that the queen is not on the top of the heap in the suits. She's not the king. She's the queen. So the queen is, it's tradition of family. The Queen of Coins reflects a person, a woman who's financially adroit. She possesses pragmatism and practical nature. This is a person who's going to come to your aid. And by coming to aid, it doesn't mean that you're like, oh, help me, I'm drowning. It could be. But it could be somebody that represents the coming to you when you need them and they help you out. You could be on managing money, because the Queen of Coins is about managing money. She's on top of that heap. You're going to be granted the opportunity to create something secure in your environment by the talents that you, Barry, have been developing. And the help that you give and continue to give to those in need is going to be really significant. And a feminine influence in your life in the very present of things is going to give you some practical advice. And the advice is going to help you create abundant prosperity. All right? Effectively utilizing your talents is going to lead you, as it would any of us, to financial success if we do it effectively. And the more practical behaviors and prosperity that you exhibit, the more success you find. And so this is a practical, organized, reliable multitasker. This could just be elements of you that have to come out. You have to nurture those things in yourself. It's abundance, it's wealth, we're getting a lot of very positive cards today. Was it last week or the week before? It just seemed every card had something a little dark for somebody. These are all very positive today. This card requires you to love yourself, be unafraid of change or the journey that could lie ahead in order to achieve your goals. And that there could be a woman that is there that is to help you through those tasks and help you through all of that. Offer good advice. Or you could just be the person who this represents. That you have to incorporate those things into what you do. So there you go, Barry. There it is. Folks, that's all I'm going to do for readings today. I hear all my family out in the other room making noise, and so I'm going to go join them. But remember, I do readings as part of what I do for a living. You can go over to my website, ScottAllenRoberts.com. I'll just type it in here if you need to see it. And you can click on once you're there, click on the tarot link, and you can get yourself a reading. So that's what I do. And we can do that all throughout the week. It's part of what I do. All right. So, well, folks, it was good to hang with you today. I hope you got something efficacious out of all the stuff we talked about today. Go out there, be safe today. Be good to each other. And thank you, Leslie and Steph and everybody else. I appreciate that. So go out and have a good day, despite the miserable day some are having in the cities. And so do your best. I think it's going to be sunshiny here today. It's going to start getting hot this week here. It's going to get up into the 90s again this week now. So it'll start getting warm as we push that 100 threshold. So on the PayPal me, Scott, that Audrey just put up, that's if you want to donate anything to my PayPal, help my cause over here on the radio. So we do this every day. Not this kind of show every day. This is actually off air. This is not on the radio network. This is on just my YouTube channel. But during the week, remember, 9 p.m. Central Time every night this week, Monday through Friday, the Intrepid radio program. Then I'm also on with Rocky for the Situation Room at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time every night. And sometimes we broadcast that live a little earlier, depends on the schedule. But always 7 p.m. for the show. Watch for the live show. Rocky's schedule gets a little haphazard sometimes, and we have to work around the way he's scheduled. My show every night at 9 p.m. That's 10 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Western. Pacific, I guess it is. So thank you for being here. We'll see you during the shows this week. I'll be right here in the chat room, live chat room going. And that's it. That's all I got. And thank you. British Columbia, Canada sends love. Thank you, Truth in Me. I appreciate that. Not far from Canada. But it seems like a long way when you talk about driving. But I'm in Wisconsin, Minnesota. And it was always to get up to the Canadian border, roughly 6-7 hour drive. But that's straight north. Tip of Minnesota thrusts up into Canada. So there you go. And our 200th episode, yes, was Friday. So thank you all for being there for that. We didn't do a lot of celebrating, but I couldn't find any, those little blow things. Woo, where the thing comes out. But I appreciate you all being here. And we'll see you again tomorrow night. So have a fun day. Talk to you later. That's the Minnesota goodbye, they call it. The long goodbye. We'll see you later, folks.